Hello. Hello. Yeah, I see her. So I just need perhaps, Councilmember, perhaps you can call the meeting to order and then I will, since you are the council president. And then either you can announce or I can announce who's all here. Everyone's here. Councilmember Bills is online as well as the mayor. So I can do that or you can.
City credentials, and there'll be a seat or a section for elected officials and stuff to be sitting. So I'll throw out an email, hopefully the next day or two. We're kind of at 80 counties beck and call right now on what's going on. But the procession starts, I believe it was 1:30 over there in Boise or in Garden City, and then it's going to get on the freeway, and we'll take over once it gets into Canyon County, peel them off the freeway, and go to Idaho Center Boulevard.
All right, well,
Okay, hold on, wait. Okay.
are you ready? Call this meeting to order of the April 24th special council meeting and open with prayer and a pledge.
Council President, I'd like to announce that all members of the council are present, with Council Member Bills being remote, as well as the mayor.
Thank you. All right, so we'll start out with ED presentation. Captain Skoglund.
All right, yeah, I'm glad you're not an intimidating bunch. So good morning. My name's Eric Skoglund. I am a captain at the police department. I'm going to present for you today the personnel and budget proposal. And if this looks formatted similar to last week, that's because I completely plagiarized that from Jeff Barnes. So this was shared, so I use the same format as what Jeff did in his presentation. I'm going to cover what the mission of the Nampa Police Department is. We're going to go over our FY24 accomplishments and goals. I'll then go into what our FY25 goals are and the staffing requests that correlate with that, and then kind of give a budget overview on the rest of the budget, capital, and the rest of that. And as you have questions, feel free to lob the softballs my way and rifle the hardballs toward the chief. Any questions that you do have, please ask them as we go. I don't want you to forget and save them till the end, so feel free to interrupt. So the mission of the Nampa Police Department is through integrity, teamwork, and excellence. We will respectfully protect and serve our community. I've underlined our core values, which we integrate into our performance evaluations. They're a part of the expectation on a daily basis in our agency, so that's why I've highlighted those for you. We have 215 employees at the police department, 146 police officers, and then 69 non-sworn. So I want to give you a little bit of an overview on how we allocate those personnel. So I know you're aware of many of these units, but this is just kind of a little bit of a reminder on, or a refresher for you on really how we allocate that staff and use them today. So we have a traffic team of 7 patrol officers that are very busy enforcing traffic laws, helping motorists safely commute throughout our city. We have 3 full-time employees in our real-time crime center. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and you should have a flyer that I handed each of you or placed there on your dais that talks a little bit about that. We will talk about the real-time crime center a little bit more. That's kind of been our crown jewel this past year. We have 5 analysts, 3 of which work directly with that real-time crime center, and a couple that are embedded, as I would say, with our investigations divisions. We have 17 full-time dispatchers and then a couple of part-time dispatchers that handle the calls that come into from our community. Our patrol division, which is the largest division within the police department, has roughly 69. This is kind of a fluctuating number because personnel come and go and move throughout that division, but generally it's staffed at about 69 or 70 officers. And we have one full-time and 1 part-time employee in our digital forensic unit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go to. So currently we have 1 supervisor, or 1 sergeant, I should say, and a couple of corporals, but a total of 12 school resource officers that serve primarily the Nampa School District and a little bit of the Valley View School District that's within our city. We have 5 members of our special enforcement team that are pictured there. They do a tremendous job with focusing on the violent crimes. They respond to any gang-related crimes that we have, that any major events in that regard. We have 5 members of training staff. So 3 of those are sworn, 2 are support. They handle all of our in-service training. They run the academy along with Meridian that we do jointly. So they keep very busy. We have 2 animal control positions, one of which is vacant, and that we've been working to fill here for the past couple of months. And 5 community service officers, and 3 victim witness coordinators that do a tremendous job supporting our Persons Crimes Division. The last slide here on our personnel allocation is the investigations units, our persons crimes, our property crimes, and our narcotics units, as well as 7 evidence staff, which stay busy responding out when we have major crimes to process crime scenes. And then 14 police records staff that manage all of the documentation that gets created by those 200 employees. So they stay busy. Not pictured, the admin team. And I'm not going to take time today to go into all the specialties and all of that stuff within the police department, like the K-9 unit, SWAT team, all the different things that folks do on top of their regular jobs. I do want to jump into our how we utilize technology and how we approach essentially trying to reduce crime within our community. So sorry for the distraction. So you've all heard about CompStat. We've been utilizing this principle of policing for the past about 6 years. Since Joe became the chief, he brought that concept to our agency. Over that period of time, we've grown our analytics unit. CompStat is how we use analytics to identify what types of crime trends we're seeing, and then how we deploy our resources towards fighting that crime. So that remains a strong principle in our agency. As you know, over the past few years, we have integrated technology pretty significantly throughout our agency. And I bring this up because I know we're going to talk about costs and where that cost of the agency really comes from. And there's a couple of areas that have really been the main driving principles in our financial expansion. So that cost is largely through technology and how we utilize it. And I would say the bang for the buck has been tremendous with regard to that. And secondly, it's staffing. Staffing amounts to a large part of that cost, and I'm sure Mr. Racine would attest to that.
Excuse me, Chairman, President, do you want us to hold off our questions or go ahead and ask now?
You can go ahead and ask now.
Okay. Let's go back to the staffing.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a major issue for this year's budget. Will the 4-day work week or the 4-day school week affect the SROs? If so, what will you do with their time? Would you put them on patrol, detectives, or what?
So in some ways, it's going to benefit our SROs because they work 4 10-hour shifts. So in that regard, I think they will be able to align well with the school district schedule. What the impact is on that weekday now that kids aren't in school, will kind of remain to be seen. We're not expecting a huge impact from that, but that would be the one question mark.
Okay, so we won't have any effect of that for patrol officers on the street, and they're going to be off for 4 days. I mean, on 4 and off.
Correct.
3, right?
The SRO schedule will probably align well with that schedule.
Okay, no difference then.
Right.
Okay.
So you see what some of the technologies are. We're using body-worn cameras, license plate readers, and traffic cameras, which have been the newest technology that we've implemented this past year. Our property crimes unit utilizes covert cameras to help prevent theft and to help identify individuals who are out at construction sites or different places stealing things. So we are making the biggest use, and obviously digital forensic software has been pretty critical in our ability to obtain evidence off of personal devices and computers. And again, I'll expand on that just a little bit more as we go. I want to show you a little video here as I go into the next slide about our community engagement.
Tomorrow needs you.
To be a good friend, because there's no one like you.
Because you make someone happy. Can you hear that?
Porque eres importante.
Because you are you. Because you are future leaders.
Because you are someone else's reason.
Porque el mundo es mejor contigo.
Because you're unique. Tomorrow needs you. To inspire others. To be confident.
To be a good friend.
Because you are our legacy.
Because you matter.
Because you're the reason someone else is waking up today.
Mañana te necesita.
To inspire hope.
Because your friends need you.
Because you're special.
Because you have great ideas.
Because you're smart.
Porque tú eres hermosa por dentro y por afuera.
Because you matter.
You might have recognized that last guy sitting behind me. So I love that video. Carmen does a phenomenal job with our social media. And so I wanted to show that video because she incorporated people from throughout the agency into that video. And that's what she's about, is really putting the police department out there so our community sees who we are, sees what we are and what we're about. And we get some tremendous feedback from the community on social media. So our community engagement and outreach is important to us. Our school partnerships, the Project 988, as that video was, to bring awareness to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. That's one of the recent things that our school resource officers and other staff have been promoting throughout the department. We even have little decals or stickers on our police cars now. I'm not sure the chief loves what they look like, but he loves the message, and that message is about bringing awareness to the Suicide Prevention Hotline. We have National Night Out and the Citizens Police Academy that have been really popular events for us. We run 2 Citizen Police Academies a year, and I should give a shout out to Yvette and Fawn, our CSOs, who run that. Just tremendous. They do a tremendous job. Our partnerships with Special Olympics. Carmen told me to make sure I bragged about the fact that we beat Caldwell and Canyon County at the Texas Roadhouse fundraiser that Texas Roadhouse sponsored. So I don't know that we did so well with the cop on the rooftop thing, but we still raise money, and it's about being out in the community and helping these organizations to be able to accomplish their mission. The Shop with a Cop, Coffee with a Cop, Popsicles with the Police, we try to do a variety of different things to bring the community into the police department as well and be able to have good interaction with them and find other ways to interact besides just on social media. So some of the achievements, like I said, one of the big ones is our Integrated Command Center project. About this time last year, I think that was the big update and ask that was coming forward, was to move that project forward. I know Lieutenant Peck has been pretty integral in pushing that forward. The staff that's in the Real-Time Crime Center, we have a RTC supervisor and an RTC technician. And Jake Pepper, who retired last year, really was the one running with that ball and making sure that they got built out, that the cameras got pushed forward. And so I'll give you a little bit of data on that as well. So if you haven't been to see that, I think most or all of you have been to see the ICC or the RTC. If you haven't, contact the chief. I'm sure he would love to set up a time for you to come over and take a look. We've added are adding 2 detectives to our persons crimes unit. For FY24, council had authorized 2 police officers and also the Real-Time Crime Center supervisor and technician. So those 2 police officers, it takes a while to get them trained. And that's anywhere from about 7 to 9 months of training, from the academy through field training and all that. So this is about the time that those people who were hired in October are now almost through with their training. So in June, we'll be able to move a couple of people into the persons crimes unit and help with the workload there. You can see the call for service numbers for our dispatch center. They stay busy. So just wanted to share that with you. And I put this slide together like a week or 2 ago. Carmen said that number of followers is up over 69,000, so it's already outdated. It keeps growing. In terms of achievements with personnel, this is just kind of a trip through the past year and where we've spent some money. We have spent some money on the contract for the police department. The biggest part of that with dispatch and our sworn was, I think I got this number right, Doug, about a 9% average across the board. The biggest part of that lift was with our supervisors, the sergeant and corporal ranks. Okay. Yeah. So I know the sergeants got about a 12% lift. That was the biggest part of that. And that was really to help bring them up in alignment with our neighbors and to remain competitive with that. I think that's been money well spent. We are, as you can see on my next to last bullet point there, all the officers and dispatch positions have been filled as of April 8th. And that's the first time in about 3 years that we've been able to achieve that. So I would attribute that to the commitment to keep our wages competitive so that we retain our staff. So we're seeing that. We've had adjustments in the dispatch salary chart, which has helped with retention there. And our adjustment for longevity pay, that's going to be something that's a part of this 2-year contract, and that goes into effect in FY25. So we continue to see the benefits of the investment in our staff. FY25, sorry. We made a wage adjustment this year with our real-time crime center supervisor to put his pay, I think, where the market needed that to be and in relation to the people that he supervises. So made an adjustment there. And then recently, as we're going through a little bit of transition in our evidence section, we are adjusting some job titles there, which will also come with over time. I think it's a step up on that salary chart to forensic techs. And the reason for that adjustment was a few years ago, we had police officers on patrol teams who were doing crime scene investigative work on top of their regular duties. We transitioned that to our support staff and took that duty off of the officer's responsibility, but hadn't made an adjustment to our evidence tech staff for that extra duty and extra responsibility. So that was just a shift from one place to another that we're now putting in alignment. I listed that other bullet point a little further down because it's almost an achievement. We're still waiting for the arrival of our armor. So don't be surprised. This kind of keeps getting delayed a little bit. So don't be surprised if I come back in a couple of months and tell you this might be an FY25 move, but it's really dependent on the factors that the company that we're getting that from are influenced by. So we're still working on that and still staying in frequent communication with them just so that they know we're a squeaky wheel. All right, so just going to go through our 5 goals that we had for FY24 and give you just a little bit of an update on that. So this number is very positive, obviously. Hang on just a second. So our goal was to reduce our Group A offenses, and we've listed out what those offenses are that are part of that category. The one that's up is our robberies. It's a relatively low number, but it is a number that we are concerned about and want to track and make sure that we are trying to influence. But the other numbers that you see along there are down slightly, or sex offenses are about the same as they have been in the past year. So this is a 365-day look back to the previous 365 days. That's that comparison. I'll get into a little bit more on the Group A offenses here. Our second goal was to achieve optimal balance between our obligated and unobligated time. Essentially, the time that our officers are committed to responding and reacting to calls versus the time that they have available to go out and do directed patrols and really focus on the trends that we're seeing and be able to impact those. So we had been tracking this in those 2 buckets. We are now going through a process with a consultant to do a policing allocation model assessment, which is similar to what our neighboring agencies are also doing and have used. That process creates 3 buckets, and it basically shows your obligated time, which is that reactive time, your unobligated time, which is that proactive time, and then that other time is basically administrative tasks, the things that, lunch breaks, court time, writing reports, the things that you have to do to, as a part of the job. So the, is it IACP that recommends the 2020? The International Association of Chiefs of Police recommends ideally a third of your time for each of those categories. So that's what the PAM model evaluates, is are you on track with that? Where are you currently? And what do you need to basically achieve that goal? So I'm giving you a little bit of a down and dirty look at what this is. We took a small sample of officers and looked at what that time looks like. When we get that PAM model done, you're going to have a more accurate picture. So this shows our unobligated time a little bit lower than where we would like it to be, but I will be giving you an update on that once that report comes back. Community satisfaction is important to the police department. That's one of our goals. We will be carrying forward that goal in 2025. And we have been, over the past, I think, 4 years above this 75% threshold. So that's why that threshold is where it is. The blue is the positive responses that we got back, and the last survey that was done was about a year ago. So I think Amy said we're going to be doing another survey a little bit later this year to see where we're at. But the blue is the positive comments, the orange is the, I would call indifferent or neutral comments, and then the gray were the dissatisfied comments. And you can see we tend to take the blue and the orange. If you're neutral or happy, we tend to take that as supportive. And if you are dissatisfied, then obviously those are the folks that we want to try to influence on what can we do to do our job better. So that's how we interpret this data. And the last two goals for FY24, looking at our response times and looking at what we've done with our RTC. The response time category was generally positive. We have maintained or responded to, and I will describe this a little bit to you. So we looked at data for in-progress calls, and we took a sample of those. We took 10 calls and looked at how quickly we were responding to those calls for service. In 80% of them, we were either at the same time as we were in 2022, or we were a little bit faster getting to those calls. And in a couple of those, we were a little bit slower. Our response to injury crashes and our response to unwanted subjects were a couple of those that we had dropped off by about 3 minutes in terms of response time, from about, I would say, 8 to 12 minutes or 8 to 11, something in that regard. So this just kind of gives you a snapshot in general of how are we doing in our response to calls for service. The goal to get our real-time crime center cameras installed by the spring of this year is well on track. We have 26 of those intersections connected out of 30 intersections that we're working to achieve. We have 46 license plate readers out in the city that are helping to identify stolen vehicles or when we have a suspect in a major case that we are looking for. All right, so we're going to transition to what our FY25 goals and then talk about the few small asks that we have. Right, is that right? Okay, there's significant asks, and that's not lost on me. Trying to make a little brevity out of that. But we're going to go into what our FY25 goals are, which aren't, the goals themselves don't change a lot from last year. We want to keep carrying forward what our objectives are. But one of the goals that I will mention here is to establish a proactive team to better serve those in crisis. And we have seen in terms of mental health some things that we want to address that are significant. Yeah.
Just a quick question, as far as on the cameras that you have, the license plate reader cameras, the 46. Are there additional cameras that you have available to use as far as within the, like the parking structure next to the library, the new, that the Napa Development Corporation just implemented 4 intersections as well, cameras that Crane Alarm is provided. Are you able to access those? Is that a part of the full network that you're able to utilize?
I'm going to let Lieutenant Peck speak to that.
And
I
he
know-
can, later, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe he can just address that.
So we have connected with the schools to be able to access those when there's an event going on or something we need to respond to. We are working on connectivity with other partners in the community. When he speaks to that, I'm gonna wager we probably do have that relationship in our and if we don't, we will be. So
And that's through the Integrated Command Center that you have access to those cameras as well?
yes,
Okay. I mean, that's value added to what you have as far as to be able to enforce or basically monitor what's going on in the community. So I want to make sure you're taking advantage of the investment that, like the NDC has made in the downtown specifically, but in other areas like in the schools themselves.
yeah. That is definitely a part of our plan, is to be able to connect, where partners want to work with us, to be able to connect to those and access that when it's needed.
Can you verify then, or at some point, that the NDC cameras that have been purchased, that you're able to access those and utilize those? Because that's been my point from the beginning of funding them, is that you
No,
had
yes,
that
no.
opportunity.
Okay.
But you will.
When they are, once they are operational, we'll, okay,
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that's in play.
okay. Any other questions on the cameras? So these are the 5 positions that we see as needs for the police department, and you can look at those more or less in order of priority. And as I go through each of them, I'll talk about why we see those as needs. Going back to where we are funding-wise as a city, and my conversations with the finance director, we recognize that these are challenges to be able to fund these positions, and that those are going to be part of harder conversations as we move forward on discussing what these needs are. So that's an awareness that we have. What I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to do is ask questions about these needs if you have those, so that I can properly address those and that you have the best understanding possible from the police department as to what those needs are. So as we talk about mental health and our mental health calls for service, we've seen that those calls have been increasing over the last 6 years. They require significant manpower to respond to those calls, and we're talking about suicidal calls, mental hold calls, calls where we are checking on the welfare of people. Those are the calls that we are evaluating when we build this graph. So you can see from 2018 to 2023, that's a pretty significant number of calls that have grown over that period of time. And this next slide gives you a little bit of an understanding of how many hours generally go into these calls. If those numbers seem high, it's because there are multiple officers that respond to them. Generally at least 2, and some of these calls can result in, if it's a significant crisis and there's a threat to the community or things like that from that person that's in crisis, then you could end up with many officers responding to those. This is a cumulative per call of those officers that respond. So on an average 5 hours and 5 minutes, that could be 3 or 4 officers that spent an hour on a call. And it added up to total time about that. So, so these numbers, I was fairly surprised at how many hours this was myself, honestly. But I'm not surprised because I do know that these are not just a single officer call typically ever. It's generally at least 2, and 3 or 4 is more common. As we talk about our special enforcement team, one of the positions that we are requesting is a corporal for the special enforcement team. You saw that picture of those. There's 5 officers in that unit, 1 sergeant. Our standard practice at the police department is to have 2 supervisors over most units. That is a sergeant and a corporal, and that corporal just acts as a relief supervisor when the sergeant isn't there. In this unit, there is no supervisor when the sergeant's gone. If they're at court, if they are gone for training, if they are on a day off, that unit functions without a supervisor. This unit handles generally high-risk calls. They're doing search warrants. They are obtaining search warrants. They're executing them. They are assisting with locating wanted people that our persons crimes unit is perhaps looking for related to an ag battery or some other type of crime that they're investigating. They support our narcotics unit when they need extra staffing for operations that they are doing. So this unit, because of the operations that they do, would benefit greatly from having another supervisor, and I think it would help the city in terms of meeting our needs liability-wise for making sure we have supervisors in those types of high-risk events. You can see there too, we're talking about what some of those crime types are, and that smaller chart shows you how many arrests those officers have made, what the impact is in that regard, and then the number of calls for service that they handled last year. Those are pretty significant numbers for a unit that size. When it comes to our violent crimes, we talked about our Group A crimes being down, but one of the things that we are seeing in some of our offenses, and particularly in violent crimes, is that some of those are up higher than what we would like as a community. The numbers for 2023 are lower than they were last year, which is why we're showing that our crime trend is down, but they're a little bit higher than they were 2 years ago. So there's work to be done in terms of our violent crime. This chart, I highlighted what the crime looks like in terms of assaults on police officers, both aggravated and simple assaults. Both of those have gone up year over year. So again, we're seeing that's kind of in that same bank of violent crimes. This is a number we don't like to see going up, and it's those officers out on the street making these arrests that we're talking about, the SET team, the patrol officers. Those are the ones that are the victims of these types of crimes. So the fourth position that we are looking for, and I'm going to back up here actually because I moved past this just a little too quickly. In terms of the mental health calls, the positions that we're asking for on that are a mental health coordinator, which is a non-sworn position, and a police officer, sworn position, to work together as a team. The idea behind that concept is that when they're on duty, they could respond with patrol and help with those types of calls. But even more importantly, the calls that happen over the weekend and in the evenings, they can follow up on during the week to see that the services that that person could benefit from are being provided, help connect them, things of that nature, make sure that we as a police department are closing those gaps between what people need and what resources are available. Our intent with that, and I think we've done a little bit of outreach with neighboring agencies who have utilized this concept, Boise PD in particular. They've had success with that. And the hope is that we don't end up out on another call that's a mental crisis for that person. So if we can reduce the recidivism in that regard, then I think we can have an impact on these types of calls for service. So that's the premise. So our digital forensics unit is very busy. As you saw from my overview of the department, we have a full-time and a part-time employee working in that unit. This unit helps support the operations of the department and almost all the divisions that do investigative work or respond to calls. Over the past 3 years, their workload has more than doubled. So they've gone from 331 devices examined in 2021 to almost 800 in 2023. That's a lot of work for 1.5 people. The reason that's a lot of work, if you understand what that work looks like, when they take a device, they go through several steps in examining that. First step is to try to get into the device, assuming we have reason to do that. Getting past codes and all of that, they're utilizing the software that they have, but that can take, it can take an hour, it can take 2 hours, it can take a bit of time to do that. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it can take an extended period of time. Once they get into the device, then there's a extrapolation process that they use with their software to get the information off of it. That process, again, typically takes at a minimum an hour or longer. They will sometimes do that overnight and come back in, so they're making the most use of their time. But they only have so many computers to be able to do this on devices, so it takes time with each device to do that. Once that information gets extrapolated, then you have to go through a process of analyzing and looking at it. That is probably what takes the most time, because in many cases, you don't know if it's photos, you don't know if it's text, you don't know if it's other information that's on that device. So you're looking through a large amount of data, trying to find the information that you're looking for connected to the investigation that you're doing. So I take a minute to give you that, because these numbers are pretty large, but when you really look at how much time they go into, it makes them even bigger, because it is time-intensive work that they do. But this next chart is going to show you who it is that they're doing that work for. The blue slice of this pie, which is about half of it, is our Persons Crimes Division. So that's sex offenses, that's violent crimes, aggravated batteries, the interpersonal crimes of violence that unit investigates. And a lot of those cases, there's data available through devices to support their investigation. Our narcotics unit is also a big chunk of who they support in their work. So making links to the organizations that are trafficking and bringing dangerous drugs in our community this is an important key part of those investigations to be able to build that case. So it's become an expectation, quite frankly, on the part of prosecutors and courts that you do your due diligence in looking for this type of evidence. It's an expectation in those types of cases. So it's an important and key part to what we do that we just have to be able to keep doing. How long do they retain?
Yeah, as far as retention of the forensics, the items that are collected, how long, if it's digital, how long do you retain that?
So I'll answer that in 2 ways. So as far as the devices go, we'll hold on to the devices as long as we need to for the prosecutor's office. Sometimes we can return devices right away to people if we don't need to keep it, and other times we may hold on to devices at the direction of the prosecutor until that case is resolved. So it can vary extensively. With regard to the information that we extract from it, that's going to be retained again with regard to the case itself and what the retention periods are that are needed for that case.
I remember right, there was a retention of like 60 days or whatever for the camera collected information. So do you retain that longer if it's an active case?
Yeah, so these would be different from that, because that type of data is kept for that period of time because it's not connected to a case yet. If the data that we get off of a camera is connected to a case, then it moves into a different bucket, and now it's held with the retention period related to that particular case. So, but general information that's collected just off of the daily data, that's the 60-day window that you're talking about.
Thank you.
So this type of data is if they're pulling data off of a device, it's related to a case. They're not doing that for any other reason, so it's going to always fall into the retention period for that particular case. The last position that we're bringing forward here for council is a lieutenant position. And I know this was discussed last fiscal year as a need. We're still seeing that as a need for a number of reasons. I'm giving you a comparison to our neighboring agencies so you can have an idea of what does Caldwell, what does Meridian command staff structure look like in regard to how many people that they, employees that they have within those respective departments. But our lieutenants are really the ones that push forward the messaging of the chief. They're the ones that carry our directives to the patrol unit, to the investigations unit, to our support staff, and keep that consistent message moving through the agency. So it's important to us to make sure that that messaging is consistent, to make sure that we are engaged at an administrative level with our staff, and to have a proper span of control to get that done. So, so those are the main principles for why that lieutenant position is a need for us. Any questions in regard to that?
Captain, I have a question on the LT position. Did you have money in there to backfill that? Because I assume it would be transferred from within the agency.
Yeah, this would be a promotion from within the agency. I list the cost of what that lieutenant is back on the previous slide. 192, yeah. So, so that's the overall cost for that position. What it would result in is a promotion up and then a backfill at the end.
Does that include benefits?
Yeah,
Is it salary and benefits?
that's wages, benefits. Yeah.
Okay.
So, so I will go. Well, I'll show you the org chart and where these positions essentially would fit in on our org chart. Without that administrative lieutenant position, and I don't know how well you can see that, but that top box on the left is that administrative lieutenant. That would be the new assignment. And you can see the 5 other lieutenants in the row with them. Without that position, those 5 lieutenants are doing all these duties. And there are extra responsibilities. I can't fit all of their responsibilities onto an org chart. You know, they have other duties. I don't know if like for instance, the SWAT team, the armory, the range, there's a variety of extra duties that these lieutenants have to manage on top of the supervision that they do of these respective units that are mapped out on this org chart. So this gives you a broad overview of what that would look like.
So Lieutenant, so what would be the total amount that you're asking for the 25 year?
So this slide gives you the cost breakdown on those different positions. And I will tell you that if Mr. Racine was to stand up here and talk right after me, this is an unachievable number, or very difficult to achieve, let me say. So I think there are tough decisions that have to be made here in regard to what these needs are. And I know that there are other departments within the city that have needs as well. That's, again, not lost on us. So, so I'm not here to ask for you to take our needs and not meet other people's needs. But there are challenges that you have to look at here and that we have to look at here. So,
Do you have a priority of these if we had to pick and choose?
Yeah, as I stated earlier, I think you can look at these in essentially the order of priority. I would tell you the forensic position and the corporal position in SET are, I would put them on par. I don't know that I could prioritize one over the other in that regard. Those are, you know, as I explained, the workload with digital forensics, that workload is going to keep going up if we don't find a way to manage that somehow. And as far as the set team and the work that they do, that's going to keep increasing as well. So, and having a supervisor for that unit when the sergeant's not there is pretty important. So those are a couple of areas that I have a hard time putting one on top of the other.
Eric, so if you put it back, the mental health facilitator plus the officer, that itself is a prevention for the safety of officers because of mental health issues. So that is a big thing with me. It also gains intel for who's liable, who's going to act, who's going to be violent to other officers. So to me, that's a no-brainer. That has to be, we need to change our ideas about mental health. The police officer to work with management coordinators, that person has to be safe. It can't be just someone that just, works by themselves. I also see the corporal for special enforcement. You know, one thing that we all need to remember is it's not one officer per aggravated battery or aggravated case. One detective from Special Crimes Unit or from the detective division is actually 3 or 4, plus two from forensics. So it's just not one. This group right here, in another given agency, I would suspect that this group here is being done by 10 somewhere else. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I don't know if I could answer that. You know, I know the impact that these positions would have in our agency, and it would be significant. So,
yeah, that's what I think about is that this is the bare bones, basically. You don't have to answer that because I think it is bare bone. It should be more, but
yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So, since this isn't a public hearing, I'm not going to go into any specific details, but within the current budget structure, we're limited by this year the new construction income. My estimate of that won't be formally substantiated by Canyon County until preliminarily in May and then again in June, but the actual final numbers won't come in until about the time we're doing our budget hearing. So it makes it a little difficult, but in the current version of the budget, along with all other costs, we do have the first 3 incorporated into the current proposal. But I don't have money right now for the remaining positions they've requested. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't happen if the council had a will to move other things, change things. It's always possible, but right now the first 3 are a component of our initial budget presentation. But I think as we go through the workshops, you'll have the opportunity to look and see how we've allocated our funds, and through your direction with Mayor to determine if that's the final direction we want to go. But that will be in the workshops in July.
So Doug, quick question for you then. That's in my mind, I'm thinking we're taking 5 steps back because now we're being presented desired expenses that we can't afford if we have a balanced budget.
Yeah.
And so when we get into the workshops, will these efforts, will you then, as a group of leaders in our different departments, be coming together to present to council a balanced budget
Yes.
like we have? Okay.
It will be a balanced, but definitely be a balanced budget.
Okay.
But we will also present options should the council decide to either reallocate, re-envision or something. You have that capacity as your determination, but the budget presented will be balanced.
Could you preview for me what the options would be to make something like this happen as somebody new to the process?
Yes and no. Like I said, it's not a public hearing, so I can't give specifics. because I'm not soliciting that direction at this point in time. The options would be, I mean, you theoretically you could move funds from one department to the next. There would be an impact on that. Let's say you chose to decrease funding in one department. Generally in that department that had a decrease, there would be a decrease in, since we are 70, 80% staff, there would be a staffing impact in one department in order to fund money to the other department. The challenge here is that we value public safety very highly. And this year, because of a variety of things happening, we're a little tighter. We have COPS grants maturing. So the grants that helped us get a few police officers, they're maturing, and that means they come on to the city's tax burden. So that's part of what's restricting our funds. We have the MPPA agreement, which we agreed to last year, is also fully hitting the financials this year. We have a significant increase in PERSI costs from the state, especially with related to police. They, in their rates that they designed a couple of years ago and then fully executed in July, there's a significant increase in the rates for police. So these are the issues we're dealing with. So it's not like we're underfunding the police, it's just that these costs are all hitting at the same time, and it's limiting what I can do right now with the funds I've got. Now, there's also, I know it is not popular, the option of ultimate resort is foregone. That's not been a popular thought here. I do know that both Boise and Meridian are intending to ask for 1% foregone. I don't know if they'll get it, but I know they're intending to. We never have, and that would be up to the council should they choose to do that. If you did choose to do that, the way it works is you can take 1% for operational costs, and that rolls into the base for this year, next year, and forward. If you chose money for capital, you could choose 3% for capital as a one-time bump that does not roll into the base. Those are just some of the rules around use of foregone. But that's up to the council in their decision.
Ballpark, what does that 1% look like? Not that I am a
Sure.
favorable proponent,
Sure.
but I would like to know the number.
Just slightly north of 400,000. And for an individual home, it's probably, $5 a year, an average home. It's about what it would land at. Anyway, I just wanted to add a little flavor to that because the requests are important, but we were limited to the funds we have to pay for it.
Apologies, one last question. So previewing what we're going to be doing over the next couple Wednesdays or multiple Wednesdays, having this budget proposed in front of us that shows an excess, what we can afford is 3, but we have in front of us 5. Are most of the budgets going to be asking for something similar to this, or are they going to be within their means and maybe we can?
No, when we present the budget, it will be within the means we have to afford. That means that we have, in some cases, in many cases, to say no, that they can't spend something this year. We've asked for the departments to look in their budgets in the non-labor block to look for a 5% cut in operational costs so that we can afford some increases in labor because the inflation rate still continues to tick up. If you looked at the last 3 inflation reports, they're slowly ticking up each month. They're up to about 3.8, 3.9%. So we're not going to be able to keep pace with that. But we have to try to a certain extent. So, yeah, it becomes a matter of matching the resources the most effective way we can and prioritizing the costs that are the most critical for the city.
Captain, I have one quick question, and we have 2 more departments to go, so we're kind of running out of time. But on your list that you have here, it looks to me like if we did not have the lieutenant position, which is at the bottom, then the first 2 wouldn't matter because the capacity for a lieutenant to run that would not be there. Is that correct?
So the lieutenant position is important for us to be able to run our agency, I think, optimally. I wouldn't say it couldn't happen. You know, I think we're kicking a can, a leadership can, I guess, in some regard down the road to do that, which in weighing what we brought forward for you and weighing what the limitations are budgetarily, that's challenging. So I do feel the need to inform council this is a need for the department. You know, whether funding allows you to meet all those needs, that's the challenge. That's where it really, from where we're sitting, where does the rubber meet the road there? But that lieutenant position would really help with our leadership capacity across the agency.
My question that was to Doug, as far as a balanced budget presented to council at the workshops, you will by that time have determined your priorities to be able to fit into the budget constraints that we have. And that's to Councilman Griffin's question as well. What are we expecting? And what we're expecting is what we've received over the last few years. And that's a balanced budget where you department heads work together. That's what's key to me.
Yeah.
Instead of us sitting up here saying, well, yeah, you're going to get those 5, but you're not going to get anything. You're going to lose people. We don't want to get in that position as a council where we're picking and choosing. We want you to work together and determine what you can do and how it work together with other department heads as a team, because you're the leadership of this city. We depend on you guys being able to work together as well. And you see our dilemma that we can't just arbitrarily pull dollars out of the air. At least that's not the way that I've understood life. But
right. And I like what Doug had to say in terms of some different options being presented here. With the balanced budget, what can we do? This is what that would look like. We can certainly, you know, fit within that and say, yeah, here's what our priorities would be if it was this. And then option 2 or whatever that looks like, here's how you could achieve this. So, yeah, I think we can.
10 years ago, we weren't getting that, and we were in that position where you're picking and choosing, and it was hard, and it was delayed, you know, 3 or 4 days of budget reviews and back and forth, and I don't want to go back there.
I know we're running out of a little bit of time, so I have a couple of slides on what our capital requests are and what our general revenue or general gov operations, I should say. Whoops. So just, I guess, really quickly, here are some, this is a list of what our capital requests that have been submitted. There's a TRT, that's our tactical response team, a camera replacement for a 20-year-old piece of equipment that is occasionally falling apart and needing repaired. The replacement of GTACs is a across the agency computer end-of-life transition that we are needing to do because those GTACs won't be supported moving forward. So that is put here into the budget, what that cost is, and that's a significant lift. We have a great partnership our school resource officers do with the Boys and Girls Club. They are looking at, I think, an alternate location, and we are completely out of space. If we wanted to add one SRO, we wouldn't have a spot to put them up there. They're pretty wedged in where they are at the Boys and Girls Club there. So, so that request for workstation expansion is to stay in a partnership with them at their new location that they are looking at. And then our patrol kennels, we have a dozen canines. We have 2 canines on each of our late swing shifts, which are doing a tremendous job. They stay very busy. The problem with having 2 canines on one shift is that if you don't have the right kennel to be able to transport somebody next to the dog in the back seat, then you have to tie up another officer every time that canine makes an arrest or whatever. So being able to convert 2 of those cars would help with our resource allocation. The vehicles being requested there are part of Mr. Adams' fleet plan on what needs to be replaced in our fleet, along with new positions that would correlate vehicles for the new positions that are being asked for. So assuming, those positions, that's what's being asked for in new vehicles.
So the impact fee eligible is only the vehicles that would be provided for new officers?
Yeah, and not
Since
even.
it's growth related.
And not even all of those, because the impact fee plan really allows for, I think, 13 vehicles over 10 years. So that's not much more than one vehicle a year as you add positions. So that,
Do you have to add the position to be impact fee eligible,
Yes.
though?
correct.
I was looking at that as far as the pole cameras, but then I started realizing that's just existing. It's not growth related, and that's where the impact fees can be eligible, is for the growth related, so. Anyway, and it can't be for salaries.
In order of priority, this is ordered.
This
But
is
what
not,
would-
this is not ordered in order of priority. This is essentially a list. There's near the bottom of the list are the things that are FY '26 forecasted. Counselor Griffin, I would say you could, I guess, more or less order those. The things at the bottom of the list are either pushed further out or a little bit lower priority.
Captain Skoglund, really quick. On the response times, you talked about there were 2 areas that the response times were higher than what you would like, traffic calls, and then there was another area. Are those positions that are the positions that you listed as your top priorities, would those fall under those categories to make those response times go down? Or is that what positions would need to be in place for those to go down?
That's a great question.
Those are specialty positions in the priority list, so we would just need more people to
Chief.
add to our traffic.
Talking to your mic.
So if we were to fill those 5 positions, those areas would be tackled? We would be able to get those response times down, you feel?
No.
Those positions, the positions that are being asked for are not patrol positions. So they wouldn't really have a direct impact on our response time to calls.
So how come that didn't make the priority list? If we know that response time's already high, then it just feels like we're reactionary. Those are going to continue to increase because our population is increasing.
So we could add those to the priority list. The reason we had these as the higher needs was based on the call volumes and the workload with regard to those charts and formulas. There's other needs or other things that we could ask for, and that goes to that point. But the asks here, as the finance director has already stated, are pretty large.
So if we got those response times where you would like them to be, how many parole officers would we need to hire to get that number up to date?
A lot.
That's a difficult question.
I know, it is.
That's a difficult
I'm just
question.
trying to wrap my mind around that, just because we're continuing to grow, and if we know public safety is our top priority for our citizens.
So I think that goes partially to our future plan for, another department located further north as the city grows. I think those things in the future plan would probably impact that. And if you have anything to add.
Actually, I think the question that you're asking for those response times, it was traffic, and I don't remember what the other, you had 2 different. Unwanted subjects. So they would be lower priorities for us. So I think to answer your question, what we're looking for, we would need 8 patrol positions, or 8 for patrol. Our asks are for special units, which are force multipliers, really this year. I mean, because there's only so much, money to go around, and so we would rather see those specialty units like our SET team get that other corporal in there, and then what that would help us do, instead of working 4 days a week, we would be able to probably push it out to 5 days a week, because it'd be a smaller shift on that 5th day, but we would have a supervisor that would be able to oversee that unit, say like on a Friday night or something, where currently we can't because we have no supervisor. We have one sergeant to supervise 4 people, and if we added a corporal, then we could have a quasi shift on another night. So priority-wise, those 5 or 6 things that Doug Racine said, you know, he's got the 3 already in your current budget, the 1, 2, and 3. The 2 that would be left would be the digital forensic person and the lieutenant. And again, that wouldn't be in the budget right now. Those are just needs that, you know, we want to put on your radar. The lieutenant would be the bottom need for us. However, that slide that he has in there listing, I think he had Caldwell Police and Meridian Police on the size of their command staffs. I think one thing that's important there is we have the real-time crime center, we have a dispatch center, we have several different things that other police departments don't have, high liability stuff, and that's where we would use that lieutenant. On that graph that he showed you that we didn't have, you know, everything, range and all that on there. The high liability stuff, right now each lieutenant does all of their span of control is about 35 to 37 people under each lieutenant. The new lieutenant position would actually add, it would take our span of control down, and we would be able to actually, I don't want to say it's a high liability lieutenant position, but they would be able to take those specialties on. So that would be our last priority, and I don't know if we'll be able to get that in the budget this year because we understand something has to give if we, you know, add 192,000. Yeah, really it would take, we'll be able to give you a better picture next year once we have the PAM model of policing. Right now we have about 1.2 officers per 1,000 residents. You know, and we'll see what that PAM model, we've been telling you around 1.5 would be ideal for us, which is 42 new patrol officer positions. So we'll see what the PAM model comes back in. So it would really, I guess, to come back to your answer, it would take at least 8 because we would need another person on each patrol team, and that's not feasible this year.
Thank you. And then can we go back to the mental health slide really fast? Doug, can you check my math? Because I'm looking at it, so per Google, for 2018, there was 96,000 people living here in Nampa, and then it went up to 23, and that says 120,000. So as we're seeing the increase of mental health calls, if we take those numbers into account, it's actually a decrease. I'm not saying that we don't need that position, because we do. Clearly the calls are coming in. But as far as the mental health crisis, it's actually going down, if my math is correct. That's why I want you to check, because it's not supporting it.
Well, if you look at, it's possible if you do the math that you would see a percentage decrease of the population needing that support. However, the raw numbers means that there's still an increase in the demand from support for police.
Right, yeah, and that's, this is a side note, just because we keep talking about mental health and being, not being reactionary, but being ahead of it, and so it just didn't support that. I'm not saying it doesn't support this position, because clearly we need this position, but, yeah.
Yeah, and Councilwoman Jangula, I'll just say that looking at Boise, Meridian, Ada County have all had the program for years, and they have seen a direct correlation in calls for service to these individuals, freeing up the patrol officers having to go out to these individuals over and over. They've also seen cost savings, not just to the departments, but to the hospitals, to the jails, across the board. So I think because we're not asking for what we need, there's no way to fund what we need. We're asking for what we think is bare minimum, right, to keep us moving forward. And I'll say something that's probably not popular. I agree with the balanced budget, but when we come in with a balanced budget, I think the council believes they are funding what the city needs. That's far from the truth. Every year, the city goes further and further behind, and we kick the can. We are in a position now that we can no longer do more with less. We are at a position where we will do less with less. And that is a direct impact on our community. We will respond to fewer calls. We will respond to fewer issues. That's the frustrating part, right? Our population's going up, our industry's going up, Highway 16's coming in. There's a ton of growth that's gonna be hitting our community. We're not where we need to be.
So with that, following on the coattails of that, if we were to find in the budget room for these 5 positions, because I've heard it now in the presentation at the police station and now today, would we be able to maintain those calls would we be able to let people know we have funded those 5 additional positions? And I know even those are the bare minimum at the 5, but are we able to maintain rather than kick the can down the road saying, okay, we're not able to meet what's expected of us? At 3, is it possible with 5?
Right. I think it gets us in the right direction. And I say that because the positions we are asking for are more proactive. They are, oh, sorry.
Sorry, we're recording this.
Oh, okay.
So they can't hear
Yeah.
you.
I believe that it definitely gets us in that direction because the positions that we have in here are more proactive with the thought process of helping our patrol teams to be out there, right? So that we can take stuff off their plate so that they are able to continue responding to the community's needs. So they are continuing to handle the calls that we currently handle and not have to reduce that service. With the mental health, with the SET officer and those things, they have a direct correlation on patrol's impact and what they're able to get out and do.
And I hope that question isn't taken as critical.
No, not at all.
I think all of us are going to be advocating for what you're asking. It's just ensuring at the same time that, okay, they have said that they're as tight as can be and the band's about to break. Well, if we give some give, is the band going to give as well? So I think I'll just leave it with
No,
that.
I appreciate that, Councilman, and you're right. It's tough decisions. There's needs all over the city, and it's trying to find that balancing act.
Guys, I'm gonna say it's time, we're way over time. We've got a little bit of a challenge because we have 3 council members that are to be leaving. I think we need to stay out of courtesy and listen, so we need to wrap this right now. Move on. Have we done animal control? Okay, so there is nothing on animal control specifically?
No.
We're done with that. Okay, so let's do a wrap and move to code, if we could.
Okay. I'll just stand for final questions if you have any, and then turn it over to code enforcement. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you, Eric.
Stay for moral support. I'll stay for moral support. Do you want the coffee jug up here? Do you want me to bring the box?
It's all yours. Thank you.
There you go.
Hey, good luck to you.
You're hard to follow.
I'm wearing it. Yeah.
So how do I shrink that down so I can go from slide to slide?
Amy?
Up arrow, down arrow. Oh, okay. Okay. It's a hard way to learn in front of a crowd.
What's that?
It's a hard way to learn in front of a crowd.
Yeah. We'll make it.
Would you need the other view of PowerPoint?
No, this would be fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Okay. I've got notes written, so.
Okay, team, are we ready to go? Are we ready? We're good to go? Okay, let's get going. So we are way late. Yeah, so we need to. Kent, thank you so much for waiting, and we look forward to hearing from you.
You're welcome. Is this on?
We do have, it should be on, and we do have a hard stop, so
I'm short.
I'm so sorry you had to wait so long, but thank you.
We're doing fine, thank you. Mayor, council members, I'm Kent Lovelace. I work for the Code Enforcement Department. I'm the supervisor for the department. We're going to be fine on time because mine is pretty short. The first slide here, I just wanted to show you that the names on the side is the team. We've added one recently in '24, one code enforcement officer. So we are currently fully staffed. One of the things that I want to point out that we have quite a bit of longevity. Juan, he's been with us about 10 years, and Carol roughly 6, and Joshua 5. Justin and David are 2 new guys, newer guys in code enforcement, and they're respectively 2 years and 1 year now. And then Brandon Shore is our parking / code enforcement officer, and he's about a month now, maybe a little shy of a month. And of course, our rock star Soila, she's been with us for about 10 years. She's our admin. Hardworking team. They do a great job. Also, if there's any questions, feel free to jump in and ask as we go. Like I said, there's not that many slides, not that long, so we'll have you out here pretty quick. So what you see here is our org chart. Currently, we answer to the chief of staff, and then of course myself. My proposal for 25 is I would like to incorporate a code enforcement lead. Right now, we don't have any. We have 2 positions. There's a code officer 1 and a code officer 2, and it goes to supervisor. I would like to ask in this budget that we incorporate a lead and his role would be basically the code officers 1 and 2 would go to him for in-field questions, code enforcement questions, that sort of thing. And then the parking officer would also incorporate some of the questions going to our proposed code compliance lead. That was not a new hire. That is moving a code officer 2 into a lead position. So we wouldn't be increasing staff, just moving staff around and title. So that is kind of the goal. just food for thought, potentially in FY '26, with the growth that we're seeing in the city, would potentially be coming for another code officer. We'll see how things pan out this year. What you see here on the slide is the current map. As you can see, that a lot of the officers are spread thin. When I have our parking / code officer position fully trained, we will incorporate him on this map. He will have a territory for code enforcement, much smaller, because his main role is parking enforcement. But as you can see in this map, they're stretched pretty thin. They're doing a great job, don't get me wrong, but my concern is at some point they're going to be too thin. Just future thinking. We're experiencing, as everybody knows, that most of the growth is going north, and that area is really exploding. Some of the things that we prioritize when we get a complaint come into our office is to break them down into what is the most important. And of course, safety, health and safety is our most important, and always should be, and will be, as far as I'm concerned. And some of those are the fire hazards, weeds, tall weeds, grasses, dangerous buildings, raw sewage, open and accessible buildings, and traffic challenges, traffic triangles. Clear vision for traffic is our priority. And then you come to priority 2, is the impact of life, of quality of life, excuse me. Those kind of incorporate the recurrent violations, the people that are just habitual violators, the debris, the yard waste, trash and debris. That includes solid waste, household trash was what we refer to as solid waste, and zoning violations such as illegal setbacks, and signage along the corridors of the city. Takes us to priority 3, and those are not so impactful, but like living in trailers and over height fences, items such as couches and furniture and, in the front yard, public view, and then also alleyways that not as visible to the public, but do need to be maintained. Priority 4 is things that fall into like the misuse of irrigation, vehicles parked on dust that are not parked on dustless surfaces, such as parking on grass, that sort of thing. And of course, the code enforcement principles are, we always try to achieve voluntary compliance. We work with our customers, our citizens, try to get them to come into compliance. We also try hard to maintain our priorities, addressing the violations according to violations, or addressing the violations according to the priorities. There is some flexibility in there if somebody needs immediate attention, we do jump a little bit in our priorities. We do everything we can to assist the homeowner or tenant through the process, give them guidance, what needs to be done, possibly go into planning and zoning, get the proper permits and that sort of thing. That will take us to the next slide and our last slide, and then be open for anybody that has any comments or questions. These are our stats for FY23. As you see that we had about 1,500 complaints, and that's everything that a neighbor would call or somebody would call into our office, but that generated roughly 3,800 code cases. So when we go out to take a look at a complaint, and if there's other violations in the immediate area, we address those also. So those are what we call officer-driven. Obviously, if a complaint gets called in, that's called complaint-driven. So any additional, so it's not a selective enforcement situation, we address anything in that area. In 23, we closed about 3,900 cases. What the difference is there is we had some carryover from 22 that we weren't able to get closed by October. Total actions is 24,000. That's everything from phone calls, meeting with their citizens, that sort of thing. Out of those 3,800 cases, we did 40 abatements and 2 misdemeanor citations. So that brings us up to a voluntary compliance rate of 99%. That's our goal is 97%. So we're doing pretty good there. And then, of course, with our parking department, we wrote 1,755 parking tickets. That encompasses the core downtown and out by Nampa High. There's regulation out on 3 streets out by Nampa High. So that, I told you it was going to be short. We're not asking for any additional employees. We're just looking to adjust some departmental staffing. So that's what I have for y'all, and is there any questions that I can answer for you?
Kent, thank you. Do we have any questions for Kent this morning?
Kent, I do really quick. If so I've been getting complaints from citizens talking about fruit stands popping up or people just selling things on the side of the road. Would that be code enforcement that they need to contact for that? And if so, who do they contact?
They contact us quite a bit. The police do a lot of it also. Some of that is you can sell agriculture on the side of the road, and that does become a challenge. But because there is a face-to-face contact, a lot of times the police will take that and address that.
So that's who they should contact then, is police? They shouldn't contact code enforcement?
We will go out and have a visit with them if they're, say like flowers. There's some flowers that are being, or that sort of thing. We'll go out and visit and ask them to come down to the clerk's office and get the proper permitting. Police will handle the panhandling, that sort of thing. So it's a little different, but we will go out and have a communication with them. If it continues to assist, then we might ask the police department to help us.
It might be good to actually provide, whether it's the code or follow up to council, all of us, to say what is allowable, like a fruit stand on the side of the road versus someone selling flowers on the corner.
You bet.
So that might be good for us all to understand. So that if you don't mind doing a follow-up with us on that, that would be very helpful.
You
Are
bet
there
I
any
can
other
do that.
questions? Okay, I know Councilman, yes.
I'm sorry, just a very last question. Knowing from living it years back, the parking situation in Nampa High, how stringent are they? Who's the one complaining about students parking on the streets, and how diligent are we about ticketing there?
We
That's
check
kind of
that
a-
area, Councilman, we check that area twice a day. The complainants are coming from the residents that when the students park on the street, it plugs up the street. Now the residents don't have room to have visitors park on the street, or they can't park on the street, or in the most severe cases, the blocking of driveways, and then the residents can't get out of their driveway. But most of the complaints, yes, come from the residents in that area.
Is this by Nampa High?
Yes.
Okay, so this has been a longstanding issue. We've met with the homeowners a number of years ago. We put no parking signs, I believe,
Correct.
there. And so, before there were not. And so my guess is as long as there's a high school close by to a resident, there will be issues. It's just a longstanding issue, but we have worked with them in the past and put no parking signs and tried to help support that,
Yes.
so.
Mayor Clay?
And thank you, yes.
Yes, just one final question. I'd like to see your capital request this year for equipment. I know that you've got some equipment that's been 10 years old, walkie-talkies or any kind of communication that you have with each other, vehicles, all that stuff. That's going to be,
Capital requests will come forward at the I believe it's June 20th.
okay,
Council meeting, and we'll go through all capital at that time.
okay.
Yeah, it'll be coming at that
All
time.
right.
Okay. If there are no further questions, Ken, thank you for what you do. Thank you for waiting this long for a short presentation, but we appreciate it, and we appreciate your efforts and your team.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this meeting is adjourned. And as soon as